Now, so you were writing for He-Man, then you said you went directly into writing for Rambo. How many episodes did you write of Rambo?
Third episode, I get a call from a story editor of the Berenstain Bears, and they're having lots of problems getting for CBS Saturday morning version, and they were having lots of problems with the Berenstains were unhappy with the scripts, so unhappy they wanted to pull the show.
Okay.
And he says, yes, I don't know how I knew this guy, but somehow I must have known him. And he says, can you try writing a Berenstain Bears script? I said, well, that's more my line.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, well, that's like a family
I wrote,
sitcom almost.
yeah, exactly. And Stan Berenstain was a very interesting guy. And I'll tell you a little about that.
Yeah.
So I write one. So they give me a script that was called the Missing Pumpkin, I think it was. It was based on his book. And most writers, when you get a script and you're basing it on a book that already exists, they want to change things. They want to make things different. They want to make it their own. Well, I took his book, the Berenstain Bears Missing Pumpkin, and I didn't change it. I get a call from them. The Berenstains were just thrilled with that script, and I saved it CBS from losing the show, and they asked me to be the story editor.
Hmm.
But the Berenstains liked it so much they lived in Pennsylvania and on a farm. That's where they worked out of.
Okay.
They flew to the West Coast just to meet me, and I didn't realize that I was the reason why they flew there. I just knew I was going to meet them because I was going to be the story editor. But they just were so happy that I was able to take their books and not make something different than what it was. But Stan was very much loved all those old. So we got to work on the show. We did things back. We didn't have a modem in those days. We had a fax machine, and apparently the fax machine on the Berenstain era was there was some kind of a chemical that was used to make the fax work,
Hmm.
and it was the smelliest machine you can imagine. And Jan was always complaining about that smelly fax machine. So that's how we would send the scripts back and forth. But he was into old-fashioned movies. He was into the 40s and 50s MGM kind of movies, and so he was very much more than just writing for the Bears. He was, like you say, writing for this family. And whenever he could, we would talk about the old, the MGM days, the old-fashioned comedy, and we put it in wherever we could. So we got along really well on that show. There was a secretary that was working at CBS for the person in charge of children's shows then, Judy Price. Her
Hmm.
name's Linda Wolverton, and she came knocking on my door and said, I really would like to write cartoons. I always wanted to be a writer. She was a secretary for Judy Price. I said, well, go ahead, write one, and I told Stan that Judy's secretary would like to write. So he said, okay, let her do it. And she wrote a really good script, and she wrote a lot more for Berenstain Bears, and we used her on another show for CBS, Teen
Yeah.
Wolf, based on that movie. Well, Linda went much further than those cartoons. She ended up writing Lion King for Disney.
Oh, wow.
That was a good jumping point for Linda Wolverton. So all these things happen, it's a cartoon, but exciting things have happened because of that. And there was another writer who wrote Bullwinkle cartoons in his early days, and as he got older, he started writing, big TV shows, All in the Family and things like that. And then finally he couldn't get work anymore, and I knew the guy because he helped me get my start when I was a kid, and I got him to writing cartoons. He wrote tons of Smurfs and everything else, so I was able to return the favor of him helping me when I was starting out. So when he was much older, and so all of a sudden he could not get work. So he was writing all these CBS big hit shows, All in the Family. And then one year he couldn't get anywhere. He would go there. He'd be working the hallways. They were so busy. He couldn't get any more work because the change of approvals to a younger group of people that didn't know of him. So I got him back into cartoons. It was kind of ironic for him, as it was to me, because I still was writing all these so-called live action shows and cartoons. but he really needed the money, quite frankly. So I was happy to help him out,
Yeah.
and he did a really great job with his cartoons.
Now,
Tons of Smurfs. My very first cartoon was for Hanna-Barbera. It was, which I don't talk about, which was one episode of Harlem Globetrotter Superstar Hour, and actually I saw it somewhere at the 99-cent store. So it existed for a while, and the guy who was the story editor of that show became the head of Deke Entertainment, which was a huge animation studio in its day, from Inspector Gadget to just tons of shows.
yeah.
So I didn't write any, but I wrote that cartoon, and then a live action film which never got off beyond script stage for Hanna-Barbera. But I guess the way I did, because Southern Star, which was Teen Wolf and Berenstain Bears, was an Australian, for some reason, version of Hanna-Barbera.
Hmm.
It was I don't know why Australian. It was on Melrose Avenue, but it had something to do with the deal. So it was an official Australian company, but we were on Melrose. I don't know, which was an odd place to be, because it's nowhere near. Melrose is, in Hollywood, couple of miles west of Hollywood on Melrose Avenue. But but nothing really at Hanna-Barbera. I'm too busy working for the other studios.
Yeah,
Busy,
yeah.
busy, busy, busy.
So,
I wrote comedy
how
and live
many
action shows. They had no business. Hmm?
so how many episodes of the Bernstein Bears did you write in
Well,
total?
we were on for about 2 or 3 years, and there were about, I guess, 15 episodes each. I was the
Okay.
story editor, so I didn't write them all like Linda did, and George Atkins wrote some,
Hmm.
and a few other people. But that was that. Then Teen Wolf came about. I get a call from Southern Star, said we're almost ready to sell Teen Wolf, and CBS is hating the scripts we've been turning in, and we have like a week to get that get Judy Price to approve a script that she liked.
Hmm.
Literally, I had 5 days to write that Teen Wolf script without any knowledge of what Teen Wolf was about. So there's all these adventures and dramas going on in the world of cartoons. Big business. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So just to just kind of backtrack and talk about the Bernstein Bears, there's definitely
Hmm.
something I wanted to ask you. Now, a few years ago, were you aware that there was a really big conspiracy theory going on about the Bernstein Bears and the Mandela Effect?
No, tell me about it.
All right, all right. So this is something I definitely wanted to touch a base with you on, because it went viral online. So many people were talking about it. So basically, the conspiracy theory is that there's a large group of people who remember two different names for it. There's the Bernstein Bears, but then it's the
Yeah.
Berenstain Bears, right?
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah, their
actually
name was Berenstain. That was their name.
right.
Stan and Jan Berenstain.
Right. So there's actually a group of people so convinced that it was actually the Bernstein Bears that they have developed a conspiracy theory where people from an alternate dimension are coming into our reality because they're remembering a different past. It is wonky and out there, but man, I wanted to get your
Yeah,
take
oh, that's
on
funny. I think Stan would have loved that, to have heard that theory. His son is now running the Berenstain Bears franchise, I guess. But he would have, I'm sure, got a big kick out of that. This is a very. Alternate reality is another. I wouldn't know. Maybe
Yeah,
there is
yeah,
one.
yeah.
But it came from. They were writing magazine cartoons. They were doing magazine cartoons, and when they started out, apparently there were some bears that lived in the area behind where they lived, the bears, and they started writing about these bears. And of course, Berenstain kind of was interesting, but
Right.
And then they met with the guy, Dr. Seuss, was running Random House, and became this huge, successful, somewhat controversial series about bears. Librarians would not. Many librarians would not put the books on their in their library. They felt the books were a bit, not too heavyweight. But it
Really?
didn't bother Stan. I mean, they made a fortune off of that
I
series.
wonder why that is because I remember, I mean, the one thing I do remember about the Bernstein Bears vividly is all the books in my elementary school library, as well as the VHS tapes, which had probably like what couple of episodes from the TV show on as well. I
Yeah.
mean, what do you think made him
Well, I
so
mean,
controversial
some
for the time?
libraries. I mean, if they had so much money to spend on books, I guess they didn't think they were of much substance.
Okay.
I guess, but there was some issues with some public libraries, but they were very popular, and I guess they still are now. Although the Sun uh, has sort of an offshoot of the original books, and it's Christian based, which I thought was rather interesting. Uh, the stories get into apparently not heavy-handed, but definitely a Christian uh, slant.
Right.
And of course, Stan and Jan were Jewish, and of course, so was the son. So I guess he was born again, and he says in some articles that Stan and Jan, approve of these other these other. Let's talk about a second reality, because the other books, I assume, still take the traditional Berenstain approach, but they have another line that skews into. Touches into the religious aspect, which is probably infuriates librarians even more, which I found very. So the interesting thing about the fact that the Berenstain Bears have an offshoot series of books that have a Christian theme to it. I hope I'm doing it justice. I'm sure it's not quite as what I'm saying, but I remember when his son started taking over joining in on the process of the Berenstain Bears books, I said to Stan, "Well, I imagine one day you'll be looking down and you'll be so proud of your son." He says, "What are you talking about? Looking down?" I said, "Well, you know what I mean, figuratively speaking."
Right. Right.
He said, "Well, when it's over, it's over." So I found it interesting that he did give his blessings, according to his son's article or something, into this before he and Jan died. Their son was born again, but for whatever reason, there's this offshoot. But we're getting away from the cartoons.
Right. Right.
But I wish the Berenstains well. That's for sure. That franchise was very good to me. Fond
Yeah.
memories.
Well, and just kind of going back to what we were saying, the one thing I think that gives the Bernstein Bears the lasting power is that each one of those books or episodes had some moral story to it, whether it was not eating
Yes,
too
oh
much
yes,
candy.
and Jan and Stan again. He had this. Well, the books may have been whatever. I mean, I enjoyed them when I was rewriting them for the cartoons. I would do original stories and some based on the books. They were fun, and again, Stan was such a fan of old traditional comedy. It was fun to work with him on a level that didn't always get into the scripts, but
Yeah.
the things that he was interested in. And he also wanted to do a movie. We were talking about a movie that had nothing to do with the Berenstain Bears, and we were, he was hoping to get it sold. I forgot what the subject matter was. So Stan, while Berenstain Bears was certainly his bread and butter, and he was a hard businessman. He really, demanded his due of the money from Random House and all that. He had other thoughts about doing, like, I don't know, it's some musical film with a very much old fashioned kind of approach. So there was that interesting thing that came right after He-Man, of all things. Then I
Yeah.
wrote all kinds of stuff. Again, sometimes doing He-Man kind of shows, like Rambo, and then doing a lot of funny shows.
Yeah.
So I had all kinds of stuff I wrote
Well,
during my cartoon days.